As a confirmed eccentric bachelor, right? 52 years old, never married. I sometimes feel like I'm being told that I am out of sync with the music of the universe. Hey, there you are. I'm back here. Forgive the weird hat, but it's cold and I'm bald. It also just snowed. This beautiful, quiet, fluffy snow. And whenever it does this, I just love to come up in the woods and just be alone. I love it. You know? How about you? Do you ever just like to be alone? Yeah. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people are very uncomfortable being alone. Not me. Solitude is something I actively choose and have chosen for a lot of my life. But I gotta tell you, the older I get, the more I wonder how healthy that impulse is. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Or is it just a thing? So I had a really fascinating conversation all about choosing to be alone. I think you're going to like it. I can't wait to see and hear what you think. Okay. Eric Klinenberg is a sociologist and writer who studies how the structures around us shape the way we live, both alone and together. He's a professor of sociology and director of the Institute for Public Knowledge at NYU, New York University. He's written a bunch of books, most recently 2020, One City, Seven People, and the Year Everything Changed. He wrote Heat Wave, which is about the Chicago heat wave, 1995. He co-wrote Modern Romance with Aziz Ansari, which is a book that I read. And he also wrote Going Solo, which is a book that was quite formative to me. And it's about the growing number of people who choose to live alone and what that shift reveals about modern life and intimacy and independence. And I'm thrilled that he's here. Eric, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my God, it's such a thrill to be here.
How are you today? Where do I find you?
Well, you find me in a frozen city. I'm in Manhattan. It's buried in snow.
Yeah.
I grew up in Chicago, and we took pride in our ability to live with freezing cold weather and monstrous piles of snow. But that doesn't make me like it or accustomed to it. I mean, it's kind of fine here in Manhattan today, just walking through the sidewalks, but there's those enormous piles of snow that build up on the corners. And it's like you have to get your mountain gear to get across the street. So I'm struggling with, to be honest, Steve, I'm struggling with that. Just how do I get across the street today?
Yeah. I lived in New York City for most of my adult life, for like 30 years, and, snow is beautiful for an hour and a half, and then it is a true hardship in New York City when it melts. I mean, I don't think people who have never lived in New York City do not understand the profound filth of a New York driven snow. I mean, it is so nasty and unfathomably deep. You have no way of knowing the depth of the slush pile you're about to enter, and it is so hard to get around the city. Like we're literally struggling to get anywhere in New York. And yet I did it for 30 years and I don't know why. But
well, you don't have to face that huge question when you get to the corner, which is like, if I put my foot down in that slush pile, like, is it just going to be like surface right below, or is it going to sink to my knee?
You could disappear entirely.
Actually, the population of Manhattan was much larger before all those people got lost in the slush. So a phenomenon that we don't study enough in modern life.
In sociology.
Where do you live now? Where are you now?
I am also in a frozen land, but I am about 3.5 hours northwest of you in the Catskill Mountains.
Ooh, nice.
I'm technically off grid, halfway up a mountain. And the snow here is heart-achingly beautiful. And I get into it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Winter's long as hell up here. It's like 5 months long, easily. And I get into it for the first 2 months. You know, you get all weird and hairy and just kind of like hunkery and strange. You just kind of become a cryptid. And for 2 months, it's fun. And then I'm angry.
No. So I'm catching you now in the early stages, I hope.
I'm romanced by it. I mean, we got like 19 inches of snow yesterday and Sunday. And I was just up there walking around and just enjoying the solitude, which is a wonderful transition. So I am speaking to you, as I said, you know, kind of hermit adjacent up here. You know, I am technically off grid. I live entirely alone, in this little kind of simple house cabin situation, and I'm into it. I really enjoy it. I always say that, I am most often alone. I am almost never lonely. And there's a lot about this that I enjoy, and it is entirely, Eric, it's entirely chosen.
Yeah.
I lived in New York City. I lived in the most densely populated part of this country for most of my life, and didn't like it, and chose to live much more alone than most people do. And I'm into it. So
did you know about yourself that you had that capacity to be alone without getting lonely?
Yeah. You know, people always call me an aloney sandwich. And I have always been this way. You know, like my mom would say, like, I would come home from school and I'd drop my school bag on the couch and I'd go directly into the woods by myself and build forts. And that's how I've chosen to live my life now. So I've always been a solitary player, and I'd always kind of chronically uncoupled, you know, and that's a streak in my family as well, you know.
What's so interesting to me though is like when I think of you, because of the TV show and my kids and seeing the way that you somehow relate to people through the camera, I never would have guessed that, you know, you prefer to do anything other than just have deep engagements with people and to like take them in. It was this kind of magical way in which, like, you know, you invite people to go deep and they can do that. And I mean, I guess I know it as a sociologist, and maybe we'll talk about this later, that it's not really about the quantity of relationships. You know, it's like life and meaning and your feeling of connection is about the quality of those relationships. And so you don't need to be with people all the time. But in my mind, you know, you're just someone who likes that interaction. And on the flip side, by the way, you know, I wrote this entire book going solo about the fact that more people live alone in the world than ever before. And I'm like one of those people who kind of can't get enough of the social stuff. Like I live in Manhattan and I love it here. And always, you know, seeking out connections. And, so for me, like almost anthropologically, I think the project came from this curiosity about, you know, other ways to live in the world that I just wanted to understand better.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say this, because people often think that I must be this, this tremendous listener, this tremendous communicator. And I can certainly do that in this way. You know, it's the one thing I have 10,000 hours at, right? Blue's Clues was my job. Blue's Clues was about to viably create this little magic trick that I could hear you and, that I could see you. And that's the one thing I know how to do, you know, and because I am kind of a very guarded, closed off dude, like my dad, you know, like because I'm that way, this is the way that I've learned to engage. This is the way I have learned to
kind of have a form of intimacy, in a sense, through this mediated environment. It's a strange thing. But I also think, Eric, that it's sort of the moment. I think that people are standing at an inflection point where they're trying to relate to this technology more personally, more humanely, more intimately, more in a way that is more real, person to person. You know what I'm saying?
I totally do. And I think framing it that way is really productive because, we tend to have this conversation that presumes a deficit or a loss. Like I was listening to a conversation you had recently with someone who's concerned about loneliness and isolation of boys and young men. Mm-hmm. And we talk a lot about how cut off, people are from one another, and maybe especially young men. And when I listen to those kinds of conversations, I often hear people, talk about the way we disappear into our screen and cut ourselves off from one another, and the way in which life on screens is inevitably less satisfying than life with other people face to face. And to be honest, that is kind of how I think about it. I think, being with other people face to face creates all kinds of possibilities for depth and meaning and intimacy. But I'm also aware that when I talk to a lot of people out there, and maybe especially younger people, their notion of what counts as alone time or together time or social time is different because they experience the social world through machines in a routine way, and they always have. And if we only talk about the way that young people are connecting in this language of deficit, I think we miss the opportunity to understand how we're all trying to remake the social world through this technology that's everywhere. So my approach for thinking about all these things is to try to understand them more as social experiments than as social problems. Yeah. And then to really get inside of what's involved in that experiment. And so the machine stuff is an experiment, mediated relationships, but so too is this incredible change of just people being able to live by themselves, to be unmarried or to live alone for long periods of time. That's something that we never did in the 200,000 year history of our species until about 75 years ago, when people in affluent countries everywhere started trying it out. And so we could just say, oh my God, isolation crisis, we're disconnected. What is wrong? Why can't we have intimacy? And there are a lot of people who talk about this change in that way. And my approach is just different. It's like, well, whoa, how did this happen and why? And what are we learning as we do it? Because honestly, it's pretty fascinating.
This is such a recent idea. What gave people this idea? What drove them to try?
So there are a few different ways to answer that question. And I guess I started with affluence just because, living alone is a materially difficult thing to do and has been for most of our history. Like our ancestors, they needed to live in groups so that they could, hunt and gather. Someone could prepare the food while someone else went out and got it, or they needed to live together so that they could protect themselves from invaders. They had no other idea about how to live. And so one way to think about this, in addition to just the money part, because it's expensive, is to recognize that it's a fairly modern idea that we see ourselves as individuals, and that we think our individual preferences and needs should take precedence over other considerations. There's a great sociologist from the early 20th century named Emil Durkheim who talked about the cult of the individual as this transformative force in the modern world, where we came up with new ideas about what it means to be a self and an autonomous self. And we increasingly made decisions about, what would be best for us, for ourselves. And I guess one great example of this is when it comes to, marriage, and finding another person to live with, we might once have thought like, if we're in a relationship, and it's not going well, if we're married and it's not bringing us happiness, we would have to really, work hard to justify, separating, because it seemed like separation was stigmatized and looked down upon.
Yeah.
I think in the world we live in today, like if you're in a relationship or a marriage and it's clear to you and clear to everyone around you that it is not good for you as an individual, like you should get out of it. You need to justify why you're staying in it. Precisely, and even that little change in our cultural orientation has massive implications for the way we think about organizing our lives.
And organizing society, right? Like the concept that there are viable human beings who have chosen to live alone and may be alone for their entire lives is even brand new to me. You know what I mean? Like that sounds like a new concept to me. And yet I know more and more people who are doing it.
Let's face it, most of us are multitasking most of the day. Like right now, I am recording an ad read, but I'm also doing laundry downstairs. It's just the way the world works. We have to do more than one thing at once. So I was wondering, why don't our appliances do that? I mean, look at them. They're just sitting over there doing one thing at a time. What's that about? That's why I like what Idea is doing. They make thoughtfully designed, surprisingly practical appliances that actually keep up with real life. Take their one-touch autofill French door fridge. You just press a button and it automatically fills up your cup while you walk away and do literally anything else. And their dishwashers have a 3-stage total drying system, and they even just pop open automatically when they're done, which is oddly satisfying. It's the kind of stuff that quietly saves you time every day. And that honestly might be the most luxurious thing of all. So head to Idea.com to check these appliances out for yourself. Idea makes the wow. Hiring is changing. A lot of companies aren't obsessing over where someone went to school or whether or not their resume is perfectly aligned anymore. The trend now is skills-based hiring. Basically, can you actually do the thing? Well, if you're an employer who's leaning into skills-based hiring, the best way to make sure applicants actually have the right skills is ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter recommends smart screening questions you can add right to your job post, so you're not guessing who might be a good fit. And their matching technology also helps surface qualified candidates fast. So let ZipRecruiter help you find amazing candidates with the skills you seek. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. That's pretty fast. And now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/alive. That's ZipRecruiter.com/alive. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter. Hello, and welcome to another installment of Just a Thought, brought to you by BetterHelp, where I sit in this old chair and just share something that I've been thinking about. And lately I've been thinking a lot about scrolling and how that makes me feel, which is bad, real bad, because, I don't know, it's always an unfair fight, basically. On one side, you have the entire global interweb, which is beautiful and glowing and shiny, and everyone is perfect and beautiful all of the time. And on the other hand, there's me on a Tuesday morning with a cold in dirty sweatpants. And I always get tricked into letting those two ideas compete, right? And I allow myself to compare everyone's curated, performative, shiny life with my completely ordinary, I have a cold in dirty sweatpants life. And then I subconsciously assign personal value to myself based on that comparison. And of course, that makes me miserable. It makes all of us miserable when we do it. And it's completely corrosive for our mental health. And I was thinking that this dynamic does seem to be hitting women, especially young women, particularly hard. We know about rising anxiety and depression and body image struggling, self-harm. And with International Women's Day this month, I was thinking, like, how do we as a society celebrate? Yes, but also safeguard, protect, take as seriously as possible the really fraught mental health landscape that women are navigating, because it can get heavy, right? It can get too heavy. It can get so heavy that you might feel that you need to talk to someone. And I don't mean like this. What we do here is valuable, I think, because we're just sort of sitting down and wondering out loud what it means to be a person. But it's not therapy. And I'm talking about therapy. Therapy is structured. Therapy is with a licensed clinician who is trained to objectively help you identify patterns in your life. And that can be so useful. It really can. And the good news is there's lots of help out there. And if it's something you might be interested in, one incredibly simple, easy thing to check out would be betterhelp.com/SteveAlive. It can, at the very least, be that first step. And that first step might be more valuable than you think. I don't know. It certainly was for me. Anyway, it's just a thought. Let's get back to that interview.
The issue is, the stigma attached to it. As a confirmed eccentric bachelor, right? 52 years old, never married, only close once, and thank God that didn't happen, you know? I sometimes feel like I'm being told that I am out of sync with the music of the universe, right? That there's a biological imperative shared by every cell on Earth, and I missed the point, right? I'm not self-replicating. You have failed as an organism, and that there's some acute medical problem that needs to be solved because, I'm single. And I got to tell you, Eric, I never really felt that. From a marriage standpoint, I used to feel a little conspicuous about not being married. Now I sort of feel like a genius sometimes.
Well, okay. So, so interesting. I guess, like, first of all, it's probably time for me to just say, I'm married. I have 2 children. I like, and the point of me writing this book was not like, I want to persuade you that you need to abandon your family. It's not a how-to book. It's
how to go solo.
Hey, honey, I just listened to this amazing podcast with Steve and Eric, and I'm going to be leaving at the end of the night. Like that's not what this is about for me. So I just want to be out there, with that, because I think it's important for people to know. Like I'm really trying to understand this. On the stigma thing, again, this is a very new way of living, and it's clear that our cultural codes and values have not changed as fast as our practices, and they've spread unevenly even within our family. So, like, the stigma you feel is probably like more profound on Thanksgiving when you go home to be with your family, or there's like that one aunt who's always like, Steve, I met this girl. I've got someone for you, or whatever it is. There's always someone in your family who can't stop talking about it, or maybe more. Stigma in my world in sociology has kind of a technical meaning. We think of it in terms of a spoiled identity, and by that, what we mean by that is like to carry a stigma is to be defined by that trait. For other people who look at you, it's like they can't see past it. So I think when I did the interviews with people, because I talked to more than 300 people who lived alone for the book, and what they often said is, like, I walk into some places and it's like people can kind of only see my singlehood. Like, that's the only thing that matters to them. It makes them uncomfortable. they're projecting this thing. And I will say, like, we still definitely have that. We have come a long way. I cite this study in the book that from a University of Michigan survey that was done like in the 1950s. And I can't remember exactly what the terms they used, but something like 85% of the people who responded to this survey in the 1950s thought that adults who were unmarried were immoral.
Yeah.
You know, or we've come a long way from, exactly. We've come a long way from that, but people definitely experience it. And, you know, you can experience this in your family. A lot of people say they experience it like in the workplace. Mm-hmm. I talked to a lot of people who said that, they got a heavier share of the big work assignments because their bosses kind of acknowledged that people who were married and had families, like they had other responsibilities that were thought to be legitimate. But if you were
what
single,
are you doing?
it's like, oh,
you got nothing to do.
Steve's available. Steve can do it.
He's not doing anything. He's watching Mythbusters. Like, you can do it. Yeah. That's also true. You know, but it's the biological part that I've found harder. I've kind of accommodated all of that now, but there was a decade of my life where I was like, dear God, I forgot to reproduce, you know, and that coincided with, the death of my father. You know, I was, very much caretaking for him, and I was looking at this cycle of life going, okay, I'm his son, but I'm no one's father. Right? Like how does this work? Because I have chosen to live a certain way that has precluded this idea of marriage, this idea of having children, you know, and that's the one I felt more than marriage. You know what I mean? As a consequence of being alone. Yeah.
Okay. I totally get that. And I think also it's a good point for, you know, bringing up the gendered nature of this, experience, because it's as powerfully as you felt that, and clearly it was very powerful. And I get that whole notion of being part of a family and a lineage, and you're the one who's not continuing the family line. You know, that idea can be powerful. What I learned in the conversations I had with people is that the anxiety about reproduction it's even more powerful typically for women.
Sure.
We have this language of the biological clock.
Sure. Which
I think a lot of the women I interviewed internalized. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, like, as judgmental as people tend to be towards men who don't get married and have kids, I think for a lot of people in our society, still becoming a mother is fundamental to having a full life as a woman.
Yeah.
And so women I interviewed who don't feel that, we felt like I could have a full life without being a mother, mm-hmm. or a wife. It was almost as if their presence, offended and upset other people around them. So they're getting a barrage of questions like, oh my God, you're 32, you know, you're 34, you're 37. Are you going to freeze your eggs? What are you going to do? And there was like an urgency about the setups that made them feel like even more stigmatized. And, you know, so I think that's very powerful. It also, you know, reminds me when you ask about the deep roots of this, I mean, a huge driver of this social change, the fact that people are living alone, is women getting control of their lives and control of their bodies, mm-hmm. getting access to the paid labor force, mm-hmm. Having the capacity to get a divorce or to make ends meet without being married. Because, you know, if you think about it, but, you know, before women have all of those, rights and capabilities and opportunities, if you're a woman and you're not married, you're either going to live with your family and be, infantilized in some way, not launched as a full adult, or you have to get married. You have to find someone, who could be a breadwinner. And so this kind of incredible transformation, the rising status of women in the world, is just fundamental to the bigger social change. People are using this unprecedented wealth and freedom and security to live, to make the choice to live alone. Mm. I think that's very interesting. And clearly there's something that people are getting out of the experience, and it's worth kind of trying to understand what that's about.
So when we do have money, when we are suddenly allowed to join the workforce and have autonomy and things, why choose a loneliness?
Yeah.
You know?
So
What's attractive about it, I wonder?
Yeah. So you're going to help me answer that question for sure. Cause I'm writing about it. You're living it. So we're going to go back and forth on this, but let me just say that, one thing I learned, which surprised me, is that living alone does not mean being isolated. Mm-hmm. In fact, when I looked at the data on the social patterns of people who were going solo, you're not living by themselves, not married. What I learned is that people who live alone on average are more likely to spend time with friends and neighbors than people who are married. They're more likely to go to bars and restaurants, to go out to hear music, to exercise in gyms with other people. They're more likely to volunteer in civic organizations. And so while it may be true that there's, some set of people who move to the woods in the Catskills and are more hermetic, for the most part, living alone does not mean being antisocial.
Yeah.
One of the kind of startling conclusions from this lesson, I learned that actually people in the U.S. are much less likely to live alone than people in Europe. And the place where people are most likely to live alone, like the Scandinavian countries that have, good amount of wealth, but also this kind of booming set of social services, like a pretty big welfare state for transit and housing and home care, all kinds of support. Basically, the lesson I learned is it's actually our interdependence that makes our independence possible.
Oh, hey.
If that makes sense.
Makes all the sense, especially as you frame that Nordically. Yeah, because I think, well, I got healthcare, I got transportation, I got everything, I got kind of everything I need, and I can do this, and it's because they're sharing resources that they can enjoy them alone.
Yeah, it liberates people to live the life that feels best for them. Now, again, I think most people who live alone have cycled through a few different kinds of experiences. Like a lot of people have lived with roommates, for instance. Maybe you live with roommates at some point. A lot of people had lived with a romantic partner, or married or unmarried, and it didn't work out the way they wanted, and then they started to live alone. Sometimes people had moved with family. There's a lot of fluidity in the way that we organize our lives these days. Yeah. There are a set of people who are capable of turning being alone into a kind of productive solitude.
Yeah.
Right. Like the kind of solitude we associate with Emerson and Thoreau and the Transcendentalists, where living alone is not necessarily a full retreat from the world. It's like a temporary retreat that we make to recharge our batteries and to think about how we want to conduct ourselves and what we value, so that we can then have these more productive returns.
Yeah.
Again, like I'm struck by how capable I find you. This is just as a fan. It's like a Blue's Clues fan who grew up with you on my children's TV set. Like, you strike me as someone who's like tremendously capable of establishing connections with people, mediated or not. There's something about you that makes me feel like, oh, you listen, you understand. Like, and I listen to your podcast. Like that is an art of yours. And I wonder if you could do that as powerfully as you do if it weren't for the time that you have on your own.
I think, I think when you say, you seem like a person who needs to be around people or who connects to people, I can just hear all of my friends laughing,
Yeah, I'm sure that's fair.
What I've learned is that I love persons, but people are exhausting, and that is the personality type that I have. New York City, as exciting as that place is, I will defend that place to my death. It's such an important place on this planet. I think everyone should live there for a minute or two. It felt like an assault to me every day. The noise, the crush, the people, the too much. I just don't do that. And I was in a pretty bad mental state when I lived in New York City. And I lived in that city really well. I had a big, beautiful house and friends, and I lived in the beating heart of Williamsburg, where all the cool people were. I never left my house, because the city was kind of oppressive to me. And my life changed when I moved up here. And it was like solving an ancient riddle. And suddenly there was more of me to share, you know, and I am much more social up here than I ever was in New York City. And I think I'm a better friend now that I'm here. There's an ease to it for me.
Right?
Right?
No, that totally makes sense to me.
And there's a huge difference between, as you were saying, and it's an important difference between loneliness and solitude. They are not the same thing meaningfully, right? Being alone is, you know, I think I read this in your book. Being alone is about a lack of something, right? It's about feeling a lack of social interaction and regretting that and pining for its opposite. And solitude is restorative. Solitude is fortifying. Solitude is connecting deeply to something. Solitude's about connection. At least it is in my mind. And it's one of the Stoics. I forget who. They all kind of read similarly to me. But one of them said something like, look, if you leave the city with your middle fingers in the air, you know, saying, I hate society. Society sucks and I'm better than society and I reject it and that's why I'm here. Like, that's not solitude. Right. You're actually living in relation to something you hate and you're doing it wrong and you're going to be lonely and miserable. Solitude is about connecting to something powerful and deep, I guess.
So I think that's beautifully put. And I think also there's an art to solitude. I mean, it's a skill one needs to develop. And, you know, one of my fears today is that because, you know, we've become so tethered to these devices that are like constantly in our pockets buzzing at us. And because so many people, I think especially younger people, are just kind of constantly waiting for that next thing to happen. Yeah. That's going to be exciting. They can't, you know, for fear of missing out on the next thing, they can't turn it off there. And because the algorithms are so powerful at capturing our attention, like I always think about the fact that today, you know, we live in this world where the biggest corporations on earth are hiring the most educated people so that they can spend, you know, untold billions of dollars to accomplish the job of keeping us as tethered to our screens as we possibly could be. Yeah. Like that's a huge force to be up against as an individual, let alone as a society, right?
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. March includes International Women's Day. It's a time to celebrate women and everything they carry at work, in families and relationships, the roles they hold every single day. And lately, I've been thinking a lot about my mother and how everything she was shaped everything that I am. And how strange it is that most of that work was unseen to me as a child, like invisible to me as a kid, but it was definitely there. She created who I am in a whole lot of ways. I mean, she invented me, really, if you think about it. And this month is a reminder to pause and reflect on the roles that women play, the expectations that are placed on them, and the pressures they feel. It is very easy for emotional well-being to slide to the bottom of the list, but therapy can help create balance, set healthy boundaries, and support overall well-being for everyone. BetterHelp works with fully licensed therapists who follow a strict code of conduct. You fill out a short questionnaire, and they match you with someone based on your preferences so you can focus on your goals. If it's not the right fit, you switch at any time. With over 30,000 therapists, more than 6 million people served globally, and an average of 4.9 out of 5 rating from 1.7 million reviews, it is helping a lot of people. Your emotional well-being matters. Find support and feel lighter in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/SteveAlive. That's betterhelp.com/SteveAlive.
So some nights I really want to cook. Like I want to feel like an adult and make something really special and really nice, no matter how much time it takes. And then there are nights where I want dinner ready in about 10 minutes. And then there are definitely nights where I just want food to face immediately. It's never the same setting. But Marley Spoon covers all those bases. They've got ready to cook, they've got ready to heat and ready to eat meals, plus like a million snacks and extras. So the fridge is like always stocked and I'm never overthinking it. The other night, I had an everything bagel salmon with truffle chive potatoes. And I was like, wait a minute, did I actually make this? I did. I actually made this. So if you want cooking at home to feel easier and actually enjoyable again, Marley Spoon is a really good place to start. Head to marleyspoon.com/offer/alive for 45% off your first order and free delivery. That's right, 45% off your first order and free delivery. That's marleyspoon.com/offer/alive.
People use this technology to reach out all the time, right? To try to connect. Online dating, for example. I feel like everyone is scrolling constantly to try to connect and find someone to be not alone with.
Right.
Right? But more often than not, people just scroll because they're playing a game and they have no intention necessarily. I know I've done that of actually connecting. What does that say?
My sense is that, people are pretty frustrated with the life we have developed with screens. That my hope is 10 or 20 years from now, we're going to look back on this moment and be like, oh my God, can you believe what we were doing? Like the first 20 years of the phone, it was like when they first came out with cigarettes and everyone thought they were healthy and cool. Like, I think we're going to look back on this and be like, oh my God, can you believe that? Because we just have the balance wrong. But it doesn't mean that the technology can't help us connect. But it's out of whack.
I agree 100%. I keep saying it's user error and that we have to show up to this moment differently. We have to, because this is not going away and this technology is about to swallow us whole. And, we have to show up as people and we have to show up with human stakes. And we have to remember that there's a human being on the other side of the screen and that there's a human being on the other side of the comment section. Literally. Always. So
when there is, right?
Unless it's a bot. Except when there's not. At least for now, there often is. So what are the stats say of those of us who live alone? How are we doing? Happiness wise, fulfillment wise, monetarily, financially? What's the report card on the Aloni sandwiches of the world?
One reason so many people are living alone right now is because so many people are aging alone. We're living longer than we ever did before. Another amazing sign of progress. But in any couple, our lifespans are somewhat uneven, right? And probably everybody listening to our conversation knows of couples where one person predeceases the other by 5, 10, 20 years, right? That is very common. Someone dies at 75 and the other person lives to 90. Mm-hmm. And, why is it important to say that? Because it's not, Steve, I could say if you just go find someone and get married right now at 52, you can solve the dying alone problem.
Right.
Because you'll know that by getting married, you have it taken care of. The reality is that even if you're married for 40, 50, 60 years, there's still a very real probability that one of you in the marriage is going to have years, the last years of your life where you're aging alone. So even marriage, we know, is not a solution to this thing. More Americans are living alone than ever before. It's a little less than 30% of all households in the US today are one person households. That's up from 6 or 7%. Around 1950, there's a massive change, right? Mm-hmm. We're talking about, tens of millions of people who are living alone. More people are aging alone than ever before. We are going to confront these issues, and we have the choice of either fending for ourselves and dealing with the terror as an individual psychological problem that keeps us up at night, or we could actually have a conversation about how we can plan together with building projects, with policies. And I guess where where I ended this book project was kind of urging us to be a little less judgmental about the way people choose to live their lives and seek happiness and meaning, and a little bit more generous about the way that we treat each other and even ourselves. Because let me put it this way. There's nobody listening to this podcast right now. There's nobody listening to this conversation who knows for sure that at some point in their lives, they will not be living alone and facing the hard part of it, right? No one can feel that with security. And so we all have some vested interest in attending to it.
Strong agree. That does sound very civilized to me. I would prefer the version of that where I have about 20 acres of solitude around me.
You're not moving to Fardknappen in Stockholm.
I mean, I'm sure it's very Hague, and I'm sure it's very nice, and I'm sure everyone's very pleasant.
They have great brown bread. They have those like breads that are really, rich and nutritious. It's not enough for you.
Eventually, I'm just going to want everybody. All right, last question, Eric, and I'll let you go. But we talked a bit about the shift, about the seismic shift. 200,000 years of people basically living in tribes, and then in the last 75, we've had various socioeconomic reasons or conditions where we can live alone, and people have been trying and people have been doing it. The stat that you gave is wild. I think in the 50s, it was like 6% of households were alone. And now it's like 30%. That's crazy. Right.
And higher in European countries.
And even higher in European countries. People living alone for various reasons with varying degrees of happiness and success. But it does seem that experiment was on course and taking shape. And then 2020 happened. And then the pandemic happened. And everyone was an aloney sandwich to a degree that they had not been ever before. And literally everyone had a taste of this. And how did that change all of this?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I wrote a whole book about the year 2020 and about that experience. And we did get physically isolated. In a way that I think was really profound and that has enduring effects. Like I think of long COVID as not just a medical condition, but also it's a social condition. It's a social situation. Like we're still rattled and addled by what we went through in 2020. I think that was just such a profound shock to our system. And look, I think one thing people learned is that they really do value companionship. Even the hermits out there. Like, I remember when the pandemic first started and the WHO and a lot of American officials were recommending that we do this new thing called social distancing.
Oh, God. Yes.
And I heard that social distancing and I kind of knew what they meant. But it occurred to me right away, this is a terrible idea because what you needed to survive the pandemic was physical distancing, but social solidarity, or social closeness, right? Like social distancing tells you you can be happy and survive by just closing your door and shutting the world out. And unfortunately, I think what that messaging did, is it encouraged a kind of hyper individualism in the United States that has really transformed us. This sure, you can wear a mask if you want to, but I'm not wearing a mask. Or sure, you can get a vaccine if you want to, but I'm not getting a vaccine. I don't know why, if you don't want to go to the restaurant, you don't have to go to the restaurant, but I want to go to the restaurant, so it should be open. We kind of lost our ability in that moment to think about what it means to live in a society and to have a common purpose and to recognize the vulnerability of some and the strengths of others and the ways in which getting through the hard things, involves finding ways to work together. And I don't know, when I look at our political culture today, I fear that in our worst moments, that the experience of being so isolated, the experience of feeling like we were on our own, like it's all on us. Like that was really bad for us. And I think there's a lot of anger that's not been processed, a lot of trauma that's not been processed that we carry with us today. And so when I look at like the total explosiveness of American life today on so many dimensions, I mean, a lot of the craziness predates COVID, of course, but I think 2020 was like a breaking point. And I don't think we've got it back together.
I agree. I heard you speak really, really eloquently on this. I think it was with Chris Hayes or something. You were talking about this subtle and important distinction between being alone and being on your own, you know? And there was an on your owniness to the pandemic where it's like, you don't tell me what to do, right? Yeah. My back is up against the wall. There's a wolf at the door and I'm going to do this. You can't tell me how to do this. And I no longer have to factor society into my survival. You know, that's the kind of fight or flight lizard brain instinct that a lot of people grasped. And I agree are still clinging to this day. But I just spoke to, a psychiatrist about a whole bunch of things. And she said something that I just loved. She said, the one bright spot of the pandemic is that everyone got sad. And why that is brilliant, the thing that's doing the most work there is everyone, right? Yeah. We all shared the same struggle. We all shared the same pain. And for anyone who recognized that, that is the foundation of compassion, right? That's the definition, right? To struggle with. That's the thing. And I think because I'm going to be an optimist, I think we are seeing some of that right now, like literally right now. We are seeing people begin to reject kind of a cruel individualism a little bit. And I hope that maybe there's some collective empathy and compassion that we also learned.
I think it's a beautiful sentiment. And I'd only add to it, you know, the other beautiful thing that I witnessed and wrote about is the emergence of these mutual aid networks all over the country of people who banded together to provide food to people who needed it, or companionship and care, or help with getting vaccines or medication. Like at the national level, it really felt like things were cracking apart. But I went to so many different neighborhoods and saw this like extraordinary outpouring of mutual aid and support from people who said like, well, the government is not giving this to us right now. And if we don't find a way to do this together, it's all going to fall apart. I think that's what we're going to need to get through this moment in American life that we're in right now. I mean, and I think we're seeing it. I grew up in Chicago. I saw it in Chicago a few weeks ago. You know, I have good friends in Minneapolis, St. Paul right now. I'm hearing about it there. I live in New York City and I still see, food pantries organized at the block level, and people running, migrant rights clinics out of their basements. There are incredible projects that people are doing at the local level. And by the way, it's true in red states and blue states. So I don't think we're completely on our own. Yeah. We just have a lot of repair work to do.
Eric Klinenberg, what a joy to talk to you. Thank you for your kind words about Blue's Clues and saying you're a fan, but I've read several of your books and I'm a fan of yours. Going solo was very formative for me at a time in my life where I was kind of questioning a lot of who I had become as an adult, and provided some really valuable context for me. So I thank you for that. And I thank you for this interview, and go enjoy the beautiful New York snow before it turns to slush.
Thank you. Hope our paths cross up in the mountains someday.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, what'd you think? Yeah. Yeah. Interesting, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there definitely is a difference between loneliness and solitude, and loneliness is indeed about feeling a lack of something, a lack of connection, and solitude is in fact about connecting to something meaningful. And I have found that solitude, which I have in abundance up here, has somehow made it easier for me to connect to other people meaningfully. So why do you think that is? How can solitude make it easier to connect to other people meaningfully? What do you think? Yeah. 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 I think you might be onto something there. I do. Well, thank you for being here. I hope you connected to something in this. I know I did. And I'm just going to sit here and enjoy all of this solitude with you. You look great, by the way. You do. Alive with Steve Burns is a Lemonada Media original. If you haven't subscribed to Lemonada Premium yet, now's the perfect time. You can listen to the show completely ad-free, plus you'll unlock exclusive bonus content from me as I reflect on this episode. Just press subscribe on Apple Podcasts, head to lemonadapremium.com to subscribe on any other app, or listen ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership. That's lemonadapremium.com.